Disclaimer: it's inspired by reality, shaped by imagination.
What happens when one of Hollywood's most enigmatic icons sits across from daytime TV's most unfiltered voice? You get a showdown that takes over the internet before the commercial break even hits. On a tense episode of The View, Johnny Depp joined the table to talk about something surprisingly ordinary: bedroom privacy. The question on the table was simple but explosive. Should smart devices be banned from bedrooms? Johnny arrived calm, measured, and wrapped in that trademarked old-world charm. But the moment he suggested that smart speakers and phones have no business listening to people at their most vulnerable, Joy Behar pounced. Joy brushed off her concerns with a shrug, calling them paranoid, and insisting that people have bigger things to worry about than their alarm clock spying on them. Johnny didn't flinch. He leaned forward, voice quiet but cutting, arguing that privacy is already disappearing one tap at a time. The studio fell silent as he asked, "At what point do we say enough?" Joy pushed back even harder, laughing off the idea that big tech cares about anyone's bedroom, and the clash that followed pulled gasps, applause, and shock from every corner of the room. By the time Whoopi tried to mediate, it was clear this wasn't just about gadgets. It was about trust, control, and how much of our private lives we're willing to surrender without even noticing. And it became one of The View's most intense moments of the year.
The episode didn't open with fireworks. In fact, it started in a surprisingly warm way. Johnny Depp walked onto the set of The View to loud applause, and there was even a light moment when Whoopi joked that she expected him to enter through a puff of smoke like one of his movie characters. Johnny grinned, gave a small wave, and settled into his seat with the kind of quiet presence that fills a room without trying. Even Joy Behar greeted him with an easy smile. "Johnny, last time you were here, you told us you don't trust alarm clocks," she laughed. "I'm guessing today's topic isn't your favorite either." Johnny chuckled politely. "Well, I trust alarm clocks to wake me up," he said. "What I don't trust is anything that listens when it shouldn't." The audience laughed, but it wasn't a joke. You could see the seriousness underneath. For a while, the conversation drifted into lighter areas. They talked about his latest project, some of his travels, even a quick story about how he once accidentally FaceTimed a director from his pocket. It kept the mood loose and playful, the kind of friendly banter that makes viewers forget how quickly things can turn. But the real topic was waiting. Should smart devices be banned from bedrooms for privacy? It was printed in bold letters on the teleprompter. It was the reason Johnny was there, and Joy didn't wait long to bring it up. "So," she said, turning toward him with that trademark smirk, "you think phones, smart speakers, all that stuff should be nowhere near someone's bedroom? Isn't that a little extreme?" Johnny didn't jump into debate mode right away. He looked thoughtful, even gentle. He just thinks everyone deserves one place in their home where they're not being recorded, analyzed, or tracked. Bedrooms used to be sacred. Now a device listens for commands at all hours. We forget these things are always on. Sunny Hostin nodded along, saying she understood his point, especially considering rising reports about data misuse. Sarah Haynes added that she personally turns off her phone at night because she hates waking up to notifications. The panel seemed open, even curious. Joy, for now, stayed quiet. It was clear she was warming up. Johnny went on, explaining how he sees technology as something useful, but potentially invasive. He talked about how people have grown used to letting companies listen in, how convenience often blinds us to what we're giving up. "I'm not anti-technology, I'm just pro-boundary, especially in the one room that's tied to rest, intimacy, and privacy." The audience murmured softly in agreement. You could feel people relating to the idea. Everyone has felt that unsettling moment when a phone seems to know something it shouldn't. Joy finally chimed in, still keeping the tone friendly. "But Johnny, don't you think you're overthinking it? Most people aren't discussing national secrets in their bedrooms. They're just trying to sleep or watch a little TV." Johnny smiled, not yet irritated. "Exactly," he said. "We've made peace with being monitored because we underestimate how much information we give away when we're relaxed." He wasn't raising his voice. He wasn't trying to win. He was trying to make people understand the stakes. That's why the moment stayed calm at first. He spoke like someone who'd seen how technology shifts culture, someone who wanted to protect something simple but important. The conversation stayed respectful, almost tender. Joy listened, arms loosely crossed, looking like she was waiting for the perfect moment to challenge him. Sarah played mediator, trying to find a middle ground. Whoopi kept it moving, giving both sides space. For a few minutes, it looked like they could have a full, peaceful conversation. But that wasn't the episode the audience got. The calm foundation they built in those early minutes didn't last. Johnny's warnings about privacy hit a nerve. Joy's skepticism sharpened as the stakes became clearer. And the moment the discussion shifted from what's convenient to what's safe, the energy in the studio changed. The friendly beginning was just the quiet before the storm.
The shift happened almost invisibly at first. One minute, the panel was nodding along to Johnny's calm explanation about boundaries and privacy. The next, Joy Behar leaned forward with a sharper expression, ready to push back. "Johnny, come on," she said. "This idea that smart devices are somehow spying on people in their bedrooms feels like paranoia dressed up as philosophy." A few people in the audience reacted, not loudly, but enough that Johnny heard it. He raised his eyebrows, surprised but still composed. "It's not paranoia to acknowledge what these devices are built to do," he said. "They collect data, they listen, they store. That's not conspiracy, that's the design." Joy shrugged. "So what? Every tech product collects data. People use them because they like convenience. If my speaker wants to hear me snore at night, I honestly don't care." Sarah tried to jump in with a light tone. "Well, nobody wants to hear anybody snore," she joked, but the tension was already moving in a different direction. Johnny leaned back in his chair for a moment, gathering his thoughts before responding. "That's part of the problem," he said. "We keep brushing off privacy concerns because nothing bad has happened to us personally yet, so we say things like, 'I don't care,' until the consequences show up." Joy interrupted. "But you're asking for a ban. A ban, Johnny, not a warning label. You want to tell people what they're allowed to have in their own bedrooms. That sounds more controlling than the devices themselves." The audience buzzed again. This was the moment viewers wait for, the turning point when the polite sparring becomes a real clash. Johnny didn't flinch. "I'm asking for rules that protect people who don't fully understand what they're inviting into their homes. That's not control, that's responsibility." Joy shook her head. "People understand. Stop acting like the entire country is clueless." Whoopi stepped in to try to keep the conversation balanced. "Joy, I think Johnny is saying that technology moves faster than people can adjust to it. Some folks don't read terms and conditions." Joy cut her off gently but firmly. "Whoopi, people aren't children. If someone wants Alexa in their bedroom, that's their choice. You don't need the government telling them no." Johnny's tone dropped a level, which somehow made his words land even harder. "You say it's choice, but companies make sure the average person doesn't know what they're choosing. They hide risks behind flashy features. They make everything sound harmless. I'm suggesting we protect the one space that's connected to vulnerability." "Vulnerability?" Joy repeated with a skeptical laugh. "This isn't a therapy session. We're talking about devices that play music and set alarms, and record unfiltered audio whenever they misinterpret a sound, and send data to servers we don't control, and store patterns of behavior. Bedrooms aren't just for sleep. They're where people have honest conversations, arguments, private moments, family discussions, and now a device could be sitting in the corner waiting to wake up." The room fell quiet for a second. Viewers at home could feel the weight of what he was saying, but Joy wasn't backing down. "Johnny, you're imagining a level of intrusion that most people simply don't experience. To me, banning smart devices from bedrooms is like banning microwaves from kitchens because they once sparked a fire." Johnny smiled without smiling. It was one of those looks, patient on the surface, but edged with frustration. "It's not the same. A microwave can't hear you. It can't build a profile on you. It can't track your habits or upload them." Sonny spoke up for the first time in a while. "Joy, I will say this. There have been cases where devices were triggered accidentally and recorded private moments. It's documented." Joy waved a hand. "Is it widespread? No, and we shouldn't legislate people's bedrooms based on rare incidents." The tone shifted again. Johnny tugged lightly on his sleeves, a small gesture that said he was trying to keep calm. "Rare incidents become common when we ignore warnings, and by the time people realize what they've lost, it's too late to get it back." Joy tilted her head, unconvinced. "Or maybe you're just afraid of technology because it feels unfamiliar. You sound like someone who wants to go backward." That line landed harder than she expected. Johnny sat up straighter. His voice stayed quiet, but the temperature in the room dropped. This isn't about going backward. It's about making sure we don't sleepwalk into a world where we trade privacy for convenience without thinking. The conversation had officially left the friendly zone. The real conflict had arrived. The audience could sense it. The other co-hosts could feel it. And Joy, seeing Johnny wasn't budging, sharpened her stance for the next round. The clash was no longer warming up. It was burning.
The energy in the studio started to shift in a way everyone could feel. The polite tension was gone. Something sharper moved into its place. Joy leaned forward with the confidence of someone ready to swing, while Johnny settled deeper into his chair, strangely calmer as the stakes rose. "So let's get real," Joy said, pointing a finger loosely in Johnny's direction. "You're talking about banning devices in bedrooms as if the government doesn't already have enough control. You want them dictating what people can keep next to their beds? What's next? Handing out bedtime rules?" There were a few cuckles in the crowd. Joy always knew how to get the room on her side when she wanted to. But Johnny didn't react. He watched her quietly, almost studying her, and the lack of emotional flair somehow made the moment heavier. "I'm talking about protecting something that's disappearing. The idea that a bedroom is a sanctuary, a private space, a place where people can make mistakes, be messy, be human, without worrying that a device accidentally picks up the wrong sound and sends it somewhere." Joy fired back without missing a beat. "But people want the convenience. They like these devices. You're acting like big tech is in the closet with a notepad." Johnny smiled faintly. If only it were that obvious. That line changed the temperature instantly. The audience responded with a ripple of gasps and whispers. The co-hosts exchanged quick glances. Even Joy's smile faltered for half a second. Kelly tried to soften the moment. "Maybe we're talking about two different risks. Joy sees the convenience, Johnny sees the potential for harm." Joy cut in. "No, I'm saying people aren't afraid. They're fine with it." Johnny leaned forward now, elbows on the table, eyes locked on Joy. "People aren't afraid because they haven't been told the truth." That hit the table like a dropped weight. Joy's eyebrows shot up. "Are you saying I'm lying to people?" she asked, her voice lower and more controlled. "I'm saying people deserve transparency, and most of these companies make sure transparency is buried in legal jargon nobody reads." Joy exhaled sharply, the kind of exhale that said she was losing patience. "Johnny, we're talking about a bedroom speaker, not a CIA operation." Johnny didn't blink. To the average person, there's no difference once their private moments end up in the wrong place. The audience murmured again. They were no longer laughing. This wasn't banter anymore. It was personal, and the room felt it. Joy shook her head again. "This sounds like fear-mongering. You're suggesting people are constantly being monitored. That isn't happening." Johnny's voice softened, but it didn't make the moment any less intense. "I grew up in an era without this constant digital presence. Back then, privacy wasn't something you had to fight for. It just existed. You went home, closed your door, and the world stayed outside. Now, the world follows us into the most intimate spaces, disguised as convenience." Joy waited, arms crossed, letting him speak. Johnny continued. "You talk about people choosing these devices, but if your choice is based on incomplete information, was it ever really a choice? When tech companies hide what these devices collect, when they decide what's okay to keep, when they create backdoors, even they can't fully track." Joy interrupted suddenly, and her voice came out sharper than before. "So we banned them, completely, no exceptions, because you're worried someone might hear something they shouldn't?" Johnny didn't answer right away. He let the silence do the work. Then he said something that shifted the dynamic entirely. "It's not about someone hearing something. It's about losing the last place where our lives aren't being recorded, analyzed, or monetized." That landed with a thud. Even the people in the audience who had been siding with Joy didn't clap or cheer. They just listened. Sonny glanced between them, sensing the emotional fault line widening. "Johnny, that's a powerful point, But Joy is asking where the line is between protection and restriction. Joy's voice rose. Exactly. You don't fix privacy concerns by telling people what they're allowed to own. Johnny countered quietly. And you don't protect freedom by pretending privacy doesn't matter. That was it. The moment the debate stopped being a discussion of technology and became a direct challenge about values, the studio shifted again. Joy sat up straighter, eyes bright with frustration. Johnny's expression stayed steady, but the muscles in his jaw tightened. This was the emotional point of no return. The room was no longer processing the words. They were feeling them. And no one, not Joy, not Johnny, not the co-hosts, seemed entirely sure what was going to happen next.
The tension had been rising all morning, but now it felt like the studio hit a point where nobody could pretend this was still a friendly debate. Joy straightened in her chair, bracing herself the way she does when she's about to go all in. Johnny stayed relaxed, but there was a new edge in his posture. He wasn't pulling back anymore. Joy started it. You keep talking about privacy like we're all seconds away from being exposed, but banning devices is extreme. People aren't children. They can make their own choices. Johnny lifted his chin slightly. They can, he said, as long as what they're choosing is real. Most people don't understand what they've invited into their bedrooms. You can't call it a choice when the information is deliberately hidden. Joy scoffed, loud enough that the audience reacted. Come on, Johnny. Hidden. These companies publish everything. It's not their fault if people don't read. Johnny didn't let that slide. Joy. Even lawyers don't read those agreements. The audience laughed. Joy didn't. She leaned forward, voice sharper. You're making it sound like everyone is helpless and clueless. People want these devices. They like them. They're useful. This isn't some grand conspiracy. Johnny's eyes narrowed slightly and he spoke carefully. Not a conspiracy, a business model. That line landed hard. Joy froze for a second as if trying to decide whether to hit back or let it go. She chose to swing. So let me get this straight, she said. You think tech companies are sitting around in boardrooms trying to snatch up bedroom conversations? Do you hear how dramatic that sounds? Johnny's tone stayed calm. Dramatic doesn't mean untrue. Joy scoffed, loud enough that the audience reacted. Come on, Johnny. Hidden. These companies publish everything. It's not their fault if people don't read. Johnny didn't let that slide. Joy, even lawyers don't read those agreements. The audience laughed. Joy didn't. She leaned forward, voice sharper. You're making it sound like everyone is helpless and clueless. People want these devices. They like them. They're useful. This isn't some grand conspiracy. Johnny's eyes narrowed slightly and he spoke carefully. Not a conspiracy, a business model. That line landed hard. Joy froze for a second, as if trying to decide whether to hit back or let it go. She chose to swing. So let me get this straight, she said. You think tech companies are sitting around in boardrooms trying to snatch up bedroom conversations. Do you hear how dramatic that sounds? Johnny's tone stayed calm. Dramatic doesn't mean untrue. Joy shook her head. You're assuming the worst. You're painting Americans as passive victims of their own devices. It's insulting. Johnny responded with a single, steady look that pulled every eye in the studio toward him. What's insulting, he said, is pretending people don't deserve protection because it's inconvenient to admit how vulnerable they are. That was the first moment Joy didn't respond right away. Her face shifted just a little into something colder. Sonny glanced between them, picking up the shift, but didn't interrupt. Joy finally spoke, her voice lower. You're suggesting people can't handle the responsibility of owning a speaker. That's ridiculous. Johnny leaned forward now, smoothing the bracelet on his wrist as he spoke. I'm suggesting that the bedroom is the one place that shouldn't come with fine print. That line hit the audience like a wave. Several people clapped instinctively before quieting again. Even Whoopi looked like she might say something, but Joy raised her hand slightly, signaling she wasn't done.
She turned toward Johnny with a mix of challenge and disbelief. So what? The government steps in and tells people what they can keep in their own homes? That's your solution? Johnny didn't blink. My solution is acknowledging that privacy is slipping away faster than the laws can keep up. If we don't set boundaries now, we won't have any left to protect. Joy pushed back hard. This country doesn't need another rule. People can make decisions for themselves. And frankly, I trust ordinary Americans more than I trust celebrities waltzing in here telling them to fear their alarm clocks. There it was, the personal jab. A few people murmured. Someone in the audience gasped. Johnny didn't react the way Joy expected. He didn't get angry. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't crack a joke. He looked at her for a long moment before answering. "This has nothing to do with celebrity," he said quietly. "Privacy doesn't care who you are. It disappears the same for everyone." That line cut through the studio like a blade. Joy opened her mouth to respond but stopped when she saw the way the crowd was reacting. They weren't cheering for her anymore. They were weighing Johnny's words. The tone shifted, and for the first time all morning, Joy looked like she wasn't fully in control of the room. A beat of silence stretched across the table. Not even the co-host tried to fill it. Joy finally said, "You're overstating the danger." Johnny replied, "You're understating it." And that was the breaking point. Two immovable views colliding without a single inch of compromise. The debate had stopped being about devices. It was about who the audience trusted. And that made everything feel heavier, more exposed, more real. What came next would have to bring the moment back from the edge or let it fall.
The studio felt quieter now. Not silent, but softened, like everyone was letting out a breath they didn't know they'd been holding. Johnny leaned back in his chair, thumb brushing the ring on his hand, his expression clearer than it had been all afternoon. Joy sat across from him, still firm, still Joy, but less guarded. The edge between them had settled into something closer to understanding. Sunny turned to the audience first. "So," she said, "should smart devices be banned from bedrooms?" Her voice carried the weight of everything that had just happened on stage. "I think we've all learned there's no easy answer." That line opened the door for Whoopi, who nodded slowly. "We watched two people come at this from totally different places," she said. "Johnny's talking about privacy like it's the last safe thing we have. Joy's talking about reality. The world's changing whether we ban things or not." The audience murmured in agreement. It wasn't applause this time. It was reflection. Joy looked over at Johnny. He looked back, and for a moment, all the heat from earlier felt like part of something bigger, not just a fight on TV. "Look," Joy said, her tone calmer than at any other point today, "I get the fear. I really do. Tech companies are getting bolder. People are getting careless. But banning stuff from bedrooms won't fix everything." Johnny nodded. "Maybe not," he said, "but drawing a line might." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't push the point. He just said it like a man who's seen how easily a private moment can become public without warning. A few audience members nodded and even whispered, "Exactly." Sarah jumped in next, wanting to close the emotional gap. "There's something important in what both of you said. We want convenience, we want safety, we want privacy, but sometimes we don't realize we can't have all three unless we're intentional about it." That hit home, you could tell. Johnny leaned forward slightly. "I'm not trying to scare people," he said. "I just know how it feels when something that should have stayed inside your four walls ends up everywhere. Bedrooms used to be off limits. Now they're full of devices that can record or listen or track without us ever noticing." Joy looked down for a second, then back up. "Fair," she admitted. It was a small word, but it mattered. Whoopi smiled, relieved the two had finally reached common ground. "Maybe the point isn't banning devices. Maybe it's being smarter about how we use them." Johnny exhaled. Joy nodded again. The tension had finally dissolved. The camera swept across the table for the final wide shot.
The conversation had started as a clash, turned into a battle, but ended as something more honest than either side expected. Whoopi wrapped the show. Privacy is personal. Technology is powerful. And the debate ain't going anywhere. But talking about it like this, that's how we figure out what really matters. The music grows, the credits began to roll, and the audience applauded not for a winner, but for a conversation they weren't going to forget anytime soon.